I don't know. We saw a lot of the changes, and a lot of it had to do, I guess, with the amount of money that could be made. We saw some greasy deals and some people kind of selling out for the wrong reasons.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Folly is a band from Sussex County, New Jersey. Their music is a mix of hardcore, metal, punk, and ska. They chose the name due to its implications that a costly undertaking having an absurd or ruinous outcome is in fact the complete metaphor of the band and its members. In their words, Folly is exactly what we are. Not just a band of fools who play ridiculously entwined and exploited musical genres, but as people who are continually kicked while they are down, while stubbornly and resiliently grinning in the face of mainstream adversity. As you can see, these guys are pretty intense. I met John Tamillo, who is the frontman of the band, when he was a wee lad and playing drums here and there for the ska band Right Turnetti, who I interviewed a while back, and we actually talk about that a little bit in this interview. And it was funny because John started off as this really quiet dude who played drums for that band, and then all of a sudden, years later, he was just like screaming into a mic for this intense ska punk hardcore band, and I thought that was pretty awesome. So I wanted to talk to John about his days in the old Folly. And I reached out to him on the Instagram, and he said, yes, let's do this. And this is what we talked about. Jared from Face First / Houston Calls, unleashing the fury at shows, his dad being the music teacher at my high school, Jefferson Township High School, his brothers being in Right Turnetti, which I just mentioned in the very, very intro of this intro, Sussex County venues, Slim Jim and the Midget Tossers, finding his voice as a singer, Triple Crown Records, the scene changing in the early 2000s, playing with no shoes on, and a ton more. And by the way, before we begin, there's I guess it was raining in the background at John's house, so you'll probably hear that a little bit here and there and some thunder, but I think it adds a cool little element to the whole interview. But yeah, that's what that is. This week is sponsored by myself and my animation company, Drive80.com. If you are looking to get some cool content online on Instagram, social media, to have your business stand out, let me know. I also do explainer videos for tech companies who have a hard time explaining what they do, and I can help them do that in a minute with the magic power of animation. I also have a comic on the Instagram. It's called Daily Bread. Just look up the handle Your Daily Bread. It's BRED. And check it out. I do daily comics. I also have a bunch of stuff that I'm putting out there, like books and hand-drawn prints and things like that. And yeah. Thank you again for all the people who have donated to the podcast or Patreon. Again, as always, you are the fucking best. And if you'd like to donate, it could be $1, it could be $1 million or $5 million. You can just go to thiswasthescene.com, and on the top there's a couple buttons up there that help me take money. So please help out if you want to. This helps me pay for all the costs that's around this. And if you don't want to donate, then that's totally fine. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Are you still in Sussex County?
I'm not. I actually, my wife and I bought a house in Union County in Clark, New Jersey. So it's 135 off the Parkway. I'm like a Parkway guy now.
Everyone that I meet, because I'm in North Carolina, the majority of people I meet when I'm like, oh, from Jersey, like, oh, what I'm like, don't fucking say it. Don't.
Wait, are you said you're in North Carolina?
Yeah, I live in Raleigh.
Oh, no way. I had no idea.
Yeah, I moved here.
I figured for whatever reason you were still around these parts.
No, it's funny. The entire podcast has been done from here, from Raleigh.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Which is funny because
North Carolina is like one of my favorite states in my travels. I love North Carolina.
Have you been to Raleigh?
Yes, and a buddy of mine lives in Durham. Tom Chitty. I don't know if you know Tom from.
Yeah, we connected.
Face First,
Yep, we connected through. We were talking through like Instagram for a minute, and I wanted to go see him, and then like, fucking, oh my god, Plow United. Brian from Plow United. He lives in Chapel Hill. He lives in like Carborough.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right past. So
Yeah, and those I don't know if you guys ever ran into Alley with an I or remember that band. I know they're from like Chapel Hill area, North Carolina.
No.
Good dudes, good pop punk band. But just in my travels, like my wife and I went down to Asheville a couple of years ago. We did the Blue Ridge Parkway, and
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I love North Carolina. It's the most southern hospitality in the South somehow. Although it's not the most southern, it just has like the best of the best there. I don't know.
It does. Yeah.
I like great food, just I don't know, amazing, nice people. You got the mountains in the west, you got the shore. Um,
I love how we call it the shore, but everyone here calls it the ocean. They're like, "Oh, go to the
the
ocean this
ocean,
weekend." I'm
yeah,
like, oh, you mean the shore?
yeah,
Oh, well, like you guys have to pay $9 to get onto the beach. Oh, that's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I'm like what?
Yeah, actually, did you become friends with Tom? Because I was reading that you guys did a couple tours, or your first tour with Face First.
We did our first official quote unquote tour. As official as you could get in 2001 when you were renting a van and booking your shows from like Book Your Own Fucking Life
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah, good buddies of mine. I actually lived with those guys when they were in their Houston Calls days in Bergen County for a couple years. I lived with Jarrett and Tom, a couple of the other guys that were in the band like intermittently throughout the years, but they've always been close buddies of ours. And I'm still, I saw Tom and Jarrett recently for that Bouncing Souls show in Jersey City, and Jarrett I keep up with. Like Jarrett hosts some amazing football Sundays. He will feed you until you have the meat sweats, basically.
Really?
Yeah. But he lives in West Orange, so I pop in every once in a while. We see each other.
Have
Some
you
of the
tried
old
it?
Steam
I'm
buddies.
guessing you've tried his bagels that he's making now.
I haven't, but I've seen 1,000 pictures of them.
I know they're all over Facebook. It's like I made some bagels. Just like I'm always posting them like this is
Yeah.
me with my podcast, and he's like this is me with my bagels.
Yeah, I know.
They look so good.
It's food first.
Yeah.
He's a great dude, and he's always been like an entrepreneur, the business guy. He was for the band. He was the one most responsible for taking care of the business, and he has that business mindset.
Yeah.
Not like a schemer in any way, but he kind of sees like what will work. Um,
I think from looking back then, like at that
yeah.
time, because remember we gave all the duties to Sean, who was
Yep.
playing drums, and because we were like, oh, that seems too scary. But in hindsight, it's a pain in the ass. But I don't think I mean, it's definitely hard. It's definitely a skill, but I don't think it was as
Yeah.
scary as I was putting it. Like I was making it to be. I think the booking part of it that
Yeah.
sucks. But when you show up, it's just being really good at organization and just having an eye on what's going on around you and like repeating that constantly
Yeah.
and just
Absolutely.
seeing how not to get fucked over. It's like if you just have a set thing of like this is what we're owed, this is how we settle up, this is how we, book
Yeah.
shows and shit like that. If you just get that airtight, then I think it just rinse and repeat. But I think it's just getting there where people don't like that potential confrontational part because I think that's what they see it as.
Yes.
But if two people just say, look, like, sure, we're playing music and sure, this is creative and fun and stuff, but at the end of the day, black and white, we showed up, we gave a service, we're supposed to get paid this. That's just what
Yeah.
it is. It's not emotionally, and it's
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
If you look at it in that way, it is rather simple. I think what you said about confrontation, that was like there was only one in our band that could best confront when needed.
hmm
We're also like passive, but Arbin.
Such aggressive music, and you guys are like, we
Yeah,
really
I know.
didn't like
We're all such
aggression.
wussies, really downside. And we were such like pacifists that if there ever was an issue, which it happened every
happens.
once in a while,
Yeah.
we'd all like 4 out of the 5 of us would rather just be like, oh, that sucks. Like, let's go eat some Taco Bell and,
Yeah.
and call it a night. But Arbin would always be like, no, that's fucked up, man. Like, no, well, I'm gonna go say something.
Yeah.
And I think like I don't know if you guys had this experience too. It was like knowing each other's skills in that way. It was kind of like you didn't have to. I didn't have to prod Arbin to be like, go talk to that guy. I think Arbin knew. He's like, I'm the only one in this band that's gonna say something, so I'm gonna go say it.
I think people
You know?
also, if they know that, it's almost like their purpose, and people like to really engulf that. Like if they
Yeah,
know if that's their thing, they like to show up for it,
yeah, totally.
And if they're
Yeah.
really good at that, they're like, yeah, that's what I do. You're like, okay, then go do it.
Yep.
Well, I'll be
And
over
Arbin
here.
actually, when we like disbanded, so to speak, when we stopped touring, Arbin kind of stayed on and did some stints with a band, One Dead, Three Wounded, as their tour manager because he had really learned it. He learned the ins and outs and even like the subtle, persuasive communication that was required, the expectations from the business end. He learned it really well, enough to do it professionally. Like he literally got paid for a couple tours to go do that with another band.
He
Um,
knew where to land a good throat punch if necessary.
yeah, or if not a throat punch, like some real good verbal jibe, like something that would really startle a
Really
person,
shake him up.
really shake them. Yeah. But luckily we were never in the position to have to shake down anyone or anything. It was more like you show up at a show you're supposed to play, and there's a note on the door that says, "Sorry, the show's canceled."
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, like you wanna wring some necks, but at the same time, we were like we were such tourists, really, when it came to tour, not in the truly in the way of tourism. Like we were just like, well, if we can't play tonight, like let's go hang out over here. Like what's going on down this way? Let's go see this national park.
Yeah.
We tried to turn all those shitty instances into something fun. Um,
Well, I think it's funny because you were saying when you were talking about how you guys were not very confrontational. I just
yeah.
imagine I was watching like a VH1 special years ago with Anthrax behind the
Okay.
music, and they
Yeah.
were talking about how those guys played such aggressive stuff, but outside of that, they were such like dorks and just wanted to play video games all the time and like
Yeah.
shit like that. So it's just so funny. Like the aggressive bands are so like we just like to get that out on stage, but after outside of that, we're really not into that shit.
Yeah.
We're really
It's
quiet
true.
and
And
we're
for us,
tourists.
like, we played some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And we were pretty nuts live, but if anyone knows us and if anyone was to hang out, they would always say like, "You guys are so chill." I think one of my favorite reviews of us had nothing to do with our music. It was like, "I like how they wear normal clothes," like,
Yeah.
which is true. We kind of just like we were like dudes wearing flip flops and shorts, and we really weren't trying to put on an act in that way. We were loud and aggressive, but in the end, we were just drinking beers, watching Seinfeld episodes in our van. That kind of
But I think that's what it always is. It's like people, I think if people are overly aggressive, there's something wrong with them.
yeah.
I think when I'd love watching bands like at the drive-in,
Hmm.
when I would see them, they would just go completely ape shit on stage. And what all I've ever heard of them about them off stage was that they're really just sweet guys and they were very chill and mellow and
Yeah.
calm. But there's something about people that are the quiet ones that when they get on stage that they just unleash because I mean everyone has that in them.
Yeah.
And a lot
There's
of
a
people,
beast in all of us.
yeah, and it's cool, especially I think the best time to unleash that, or one of the best times, is being in a band because I remember
Hmm.
being on stage, there was something that just lit,
Yep.
and it was the greatest fucking feeling in the world,
Yeah.
especially if the crowd was doing it too. You just created this space where everyone was connected for 30 minutes or maybe an hour
Yeah.
and everyone was just unleashing. And at the end, I think everyone was so drained because all of that built up shit that they had was gone.
Yeah, and it needed to be. There was. I think a lot of people came together at shows for that very reason because like, how else am I going to express myself, or how else am I going to really get this off my chest?
Safely.
Yeah, safely in a
Yeah.
way, that's also, if not artistic and creative, fun and immersive. Like it was really amazing. If we ever played shows enough for people to know the words and stuff, to have people screaming back at you, to be singing your words back at you, and to make that connection where you're not the only one on stage just going crazy.
Oh yeah.
that there was something shared in that I think it's invaluable, and it's unlike any other thing that I could have done at that age or now. I'm a high school teacher now, so I kind of,
That's so wild.
I speaking of soft-spoken people that scream on stage, if my students find out about that band, Folly, if they find out about it, they're really fascinated by it. They're like, really? That's you?
That's so great.
I'd like to say that in the classroom I get that same, holding the mic out for gang vocals sort of experience. I don't, but there is a performance element to it in a way, but it's also I can't think of any other way to, at that age, with all of that stuff on my mind, to have put it out there in the world. I could have written it. I could have expressed it in other ways, maybe. What were the other options?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good segue because I want to go into your history of what got you into music. And
Okay.
I just want to I think that was a great place to start because I knew John, we didn't we never really hung out, but
Yeah.
we knew each other because of Roy Ternetti, and your dad was the music teacher at my high school.
Yes.
And I actually think I told this story in the Wright Ternetti interview where me and Barker, who was in Lanemeyer, we were doing, this is years before we even did Congress of Cow. We did a show. We were in ninth grade, and we did a coffee house where we got up on stage. We played Green Day's Longview, and then we were going to do Black. And during Longview, I had to kind of dip away from the mic during the swear words, but for some reason when the masturbation part came up, I just grabbed the mic and then jumped to it and yelled that part.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Wynn, who worked in the same office as your dad, because your dad taught band, and Mr. Wynn taught chorus. Yeah, so he all of a sudden,
an old friend of his. They actually went to college together too. History, Wynn and my dad. Yeah.
I thought that because I mean, they would collaborate. I mean, they had to in their business, but I felt like I heard that they went to school together. And, but the funny thing was that all of a sudden I did that, and then the song was done, and all of a sudden the curtains just start closing on us. And there's a video of it where I look to the left, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I was so mad at Mr. Wynn, but I associated your dad as being as part of it. So I was I think for a minute I was very mad at your dad. And so when I first went to the Wright Ternetti practice, we went to your dad's house. I was like, we're in the enemy's house now. And then your dad's really nice. I'm like, oh, hi.
Yeah, and perhaps from maybe a professional teacherly standpoint, but my dad was and still is very liberally minded. A big reason why I got into music was because of him, obviously, not just being a music teacher, but my dad was a little bit of a hellraiser.
Really?
Even in college, he played in a band, I guess, similar to Chicago, a horn-driven kind of experimental rock band. A lot of my early experiences with music and with expression are seeing him in action.
That's so wild because your dad was very chill. But I mean, again, you know what it's like to deal with. I can look at teenagers now and see what a giant pain in the ass they are, and they think they're just know everything. And I can imagine just having to deal with that shit. So from your dad's perspective and Mr. Wynn's perspective, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I was a little shit for doing that. But the fact that your dad's a music teacher and a Hellraiser, I think that's a good way to start on how you actually what got you into music and what transitioned that into punk rock.
Yeah, it's growing up in kind of a musical family was a big part of it. My early influences are definitely classic rock. Zeppelin, and my mom's a huge Beatles fan, so that was kind of the texture and the soundtrack of my childhood in many ways. But just even with, not just with my dad being a musician, but with also him being a music teacher, I was able to see from a young age how he orchestrated things, literally orchestrated things, but also how people kind of viewed him in that way as a maestro.
Okay.
And my older brothers, Pete and Pat, who were in Wright Ternetti, they were the direct influences in the 90s on what I listened to, but also where I went to listen to things. Because once they started playing in a band, I was in 6th, 7th grade going to shows.
Yeah.
And I was so impressionable, obviously, but just so in awe and in wonder of what was going on in New Jersey. The fact that there were bands creating original music, and there was this whole like organized sense of performance, I think, and not just like listening to the stuff that was mainstream on the radio, like my brothers showing me Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and stuff like that. I think like once I saw them get involved with music, I basically was a little brother that was like, holy shit, I want to do everything they're doing. And throughout most of our lives, it was kind of like, well, no, you're too young. You can't come. You can't come. Sorry, you can't come. But then once I was like old enough, kind of.
What age was that? Old enough?
Like I was, middle school age, I guess we're looking at 12, 13-ish.
Okay.
They were like, hey, come, we're playing this weekend. Do you want to come? And of course I'm like, fucking yeah. And this was late 90s. So to give context, I graduated 8th grade in 96. So we're thinking mid to late 90s here.
So wait, now, and real quick, because when I met you,
Yeah.
now John, when I met him, again, I was friends with all the Right Turn Eddie guys, and I was friends with Pat and Pete, and then fucking Josh, who was the singer. And so I'd go, I think I actually saw the first time they practiced, it was still Spaz.
Yeah. Or was it the Good Times band even?
I know, I think it was Spaz, because Spaz was right before they changed it to Right Turn Eddie.
Yes, correct.
And it was a practice in your basement, and then you were always kind of like not in the shadows. That sounds creepy. You were in the
creeping around.
You were in the background, like
corners.
this quiet dude in the background. But it was like oh, there's little Johnny Tamillo, and then all of a sudden I remember, I think, because you were playing drums at that point too, right?
Yeah, that was my my upbringing in music. I was the black sheep of the family, as all those drummer jokes go. I was the one who just hit things, but yeah,
so, all that aggression. He starts with drums later on.
But that all happened too at the same time that I was being introduced to Mighty Mighty Bosstones and the Scofflaws and like all these bands that like Josh, Paul Hemus, and Pete and Pat, like they introduced me to Skankin' Pickle, MU330. So like when I started to learn drums, Dookie. Green Day's Dookie was one of the first albums I like played drums to, but I was also playing along to the Bosstones' Question the Answers, because at that time the Good Times band, before it was Spaz, they covered one of those Bosstones songs. And I was like, whoa, what is this? What is this music? What is this ska that you guys are doing?
And then, of course, you have Josh Paul Hemus just like shoving it down your fucking throat because that's all he was into.
And you know what? And it was awesome. He kind of, in many ways, he was a big brother to me.
Oh, yeah.
At that age, like he took me to, I don't know if he would remember this, but he actually like came and picked me up in Sussex and then drove me down to Sound Exchange in Wayne.
Yep.
To like buy CDs, I think I bought Let's Go Bowling's Mr. Twist, because he was like, dude, you got to hear this Moon Records band. They're so awesome, and I was just like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, yeah. Like, let me listen to it. But it was such an awesome time to be a kid and have older brothers that were playing in a ska punk band.
I think it's so cool, too, because I know your brothers, and I knew Josh, and I looked up to Josh, and I don't think I'm not that much younger than Josh. I think I'm like maybe 5 years younger than Josh. Maybe it's that much. But I remember Josh was a good guy in the scene. Like I've done other interviews where I did interview Josh, and also Steve, who played bass.
Yeah,
in Right Tonight.
I know. I love that interview because I couldn't believe that was like the first time they
had seen each other
in like 15 years.
Oh, it's so fucking crazy, dude.
I know. I couldn't believe
they were in the same because Boxcar. They got together at the same place too, which was awesome. But but like Josh was, he was like a huge influence on me too in music, and also like Alan Rappaport when I interviewed him. These are these guys. So for you, I can see, and what's the age difference? I'm 40. How old are you?
I'm 37, going to be 38.
Okay, so it's not that much of a huge gap between us, but
Yeah.
again, like you were like, we were like in the scene, like right, I think at its prime for what we called prime. I mean, obviously you have a different
Yeah.
perspective because you went to the 2000s, but
Mhm.
um, just to see that perspective where you're like, we're in it already, we're in the pool swimming around, and you're kind of like, what the fuck is like you're coming along? But it just to have Josh, your brothers, be the ones that are teaching about music, like that's fucking, a lot of people listening probably
It's
don't know they are,
amazing.
but it was so sick because you're like, God damn, that's crazy. That's like your
Everything
intro.
was wonder and awe.
Yeah.
And going to see those guys play turned me on to all of the local Jersey ska, punk, or pop punk bands. Like they'd be playing shows, one weekend I'd tag along and go, and I'd see like Catch 22 and the Royalties,
Yeah.
fucking awesome. And then like the next weekend it would be like Humble, and you guys, and like Boxcar, Inspector 7. And then it would be, it would be a mix of ska and punk and even some hardcore bands thrown in. And I was just very much, I was wrapped up in it. And aside from with my buddies at the time, listening to all like the Fat Records bands and whatever ska bands we could find out about. I mean, we were obsessed. There were also like those moments when, for example, like Josh and my brother Pete, they took me to my first like true show in the city, and it was at the Wetlands.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I got to see it was Mustard Plug, Hepcat, and Scofflaws. And like as a kid, I think I was in seventh grade or eighth grade. It was my first time in the city without my parents. I felt like a king to some extent, getting to see these bands in this amazing venue. And there's nothing, I don't know if there's any way that I could accurately describe how important those moments are
It's
to.
true. It's true, man. Because like when you go to the city, you always were with your parents. Typically, it was for probably Christmas time to see the
Yeah,
tree
like
or
going to see the tree
St.
or,
Patty's Day parade or some shit like
yeah,
that. But yeah, you're right. To go in there that first time without your parents, I mean, the moment you would either, and there was always two ways that people would go in. I mean,
mhm,
obviously, there's just two ways unless you're taking the ferry. But they would go to Hoboken and take the path in,
yeah,
or I think guys like Josh would drive into the city because I always thought that was crazy when people would drive in the city. I'm like, wait,
yeah, like taking the Holland Tunnel in.
yeah, I'm like, wait, you're gonna go fucking park in the
Yeah,
city? And then you get out of the car and you're like, holy shit, this is scary, but
yeah,
so freeing right now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now that's how like the only way that I knew once I was able to drive to get into the city really, other than driving, because I was terrified to drive in, was to go to Hoboken and take the path, like
So much easier.
and that free parking along the river, and at the time when you could,
Yeah, I
and
know, that's way gone.
like, and I didn't realize too that some of the venues that I would have to go to were so far away, but it didn't matter. Like as long as I could get into Manhattan, like
Yeah.
I'll walk 40 blocks if I need, whatever.
So what do you remember the actual first show that you saw?
The first show, as in like the first
Punk
punk
show.
rock
Yeah,
kind of
like
stuff.
yeah. It was either local or was in the city.
It must have been local. Well, here before even the ska punk revolution kind of took hold in the mid to late '90s. I remember going to see the Good Times Band play with like local rock bands. One of which was Drop the Oops. I
Okay.
don't know if you remember. This is
Nah.
he's a staple in the Sussex County music scene. Mike Lawler. It was his band. They were very like, I would say they were like alt rock, but with a little Primus kind of influence, super funky. Um, I think that I could be mistaken, but this was at a place that I think was called Seasons at the time. It was the old Playboy Club in Vernon.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? There was a show, and Good Times Band played, and Drop the Deuce played. I want to say that, oh fuck, what was that band called? They were so good.
Like, are they a punk band?
Subcommittee.
Okay.
Subcommittee played, and they were around forever up in Sussex. I think they might even still play now.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say Flatus.
No, but Flatus is also attached to some of my early memories.
Oh yeah.
But I remember going to that show, and it was really just local bands. kind of thrown together, and being young enough to kind of be like so impressed by it or whatever, but also being old enough to get like, whoa, this is amazing. This happens in Sussex County. Like these bands exist. These people make music. They make original music, you know?
Yeah. You guys were all the way in the fucking sticks too.
Yeah, I know. And like you were in the sticks enough, but we were even more embedded in the madness up there.
Yeah. All over in Sussex.
Yeah. So then, there were the phone booth shows.
Yeah, I was going to say that, the phone
matinees with Flatus. But the earliest show, I can't quite pinpoint it. That show, for whatever reason, sticks out as being an early one, though. And I'd have to like talk to Mike Lawler or maybe my brothers or Josh to see if they remember who else played. But it was like, man, it was super early. It might have been 94 or 95. And then also, they used to do this thing. It was called the Rampage on the River. And it was this kind of 1 or 2 day music fest up Route 97, I think it's 97, all the way up the Delaware River from Port Jervis.
Okay.
And it was a lot of local bands. The Traveling Babanyas, JJ's Greatest Band on Earth. These are some of the ones I remember. Jeez. But the Good Times Band played. And it was a kind of a fest, sort of. It was small. But you could camp out and stuff. So there would be bands playing at night and all the tents set up and everybody partying. And I was like too young to party,
Yeah.
Like I didn't really understand what everybody was doing. But those stick out as being pretty influential.
Now, was your first band Right Turn Eddie or Spaz? Because you filled in on drums. I thought you had filled in prior to Steve Weir, and then you also came in after Steve Weir. Am I wrong?
I don't know. And honestly, I don't think you're wrong. I dabbled here and there, and I did fill in because I was so obsessed with their music that I knew every song. I was really young, and I wasn't technically sound drummer or anything, but I could get through a song, I think.
Wait, when you played for Right Turn Eddie? Or
yeah, when I played with Right Turn Eddie.
I think that's bullshit because I remember talking to Joshua because I remember you being fucking sick at drumming.
I don't know. I might have been. I think I was just like so. I was so excited to play with them because I truly revered that band. Not just because my brothers were in it. I loved them. A major influence on me, not just musically, but just like as a person. Whatever. Not to get cheesy.
That's fine.
But there were times when I played here and there. I remember playing a show at the Pipeline in Newark, and I was super young. I might have been a sophomore in high school, playing with like Inspector 7 and The Business or something. Getting home at 3 a.m, then going to school and thinking I was like, whoa, man, like what a rock star life, But then I did fill in a little later too, after Steve had left. So. Yeah, it might have been before Steve, after, I'm not sure.
How old are you when you played for them?
At my youngest, I probably was 14.
No, but is that like that was before they disbanded though?
Yes, yeah.
So you were 14 when they disbanded.
I might have been actually maybe closer to like 16 when they disbanded. I think the youngest I had played with them was maybe around 14.
Did you find that kind of like gave you a little bit of popularity in high school when you were like, yeah, I'm playing in this band? Everyone's like, oh my God, there's John Tamila.
Not really, actually, because if anything, I kind of I didn't use it like for publicity or whatever, but I think I used it for momentum with my own bands that I was playing with, because at the time I played with, it went under a bunch of different names, but Jim Slim and the Midget Tossers was the
yes. That's right. You did play with them.
Yeah, and that was with all my buddies and Jim. Jim was almost 7 feet tall, and we were
big motherfucker.
Freshmen in high school, and he was like, I don't know if he was over 21 at the time, but he like rode a motorcycle and he was covered in tattoos, and that's where my heart was at the time, was like trying to put this into my own efforts to make a band and to participate in creating my own music with my friends. So like Right Turn Eddie was really helpful in that for me, in having confidence to like play drums in a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember playing with you guys in Rockaway. It was the Rockaway American Legion Hall, and that's
Okay.
we had just first got our van. It was this blue van that we called Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then Wright Cernetti took it over.
Yes.
It was right in that, but yeah, I remember it because I think Jim drew that flyer, and it was like this really big-headed punk rock.
Yes. I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're talking about.
yep,
Did Shower with Goats play that show?
yeah, and
I think they did.
yep. I'm actually looking this up right now because it was
Yeah.
NJP Peak Archive has it, but
I think I might have sent that in to NJPP. I have that
that's
physical flyer somewhere.
I have it. Yeah, it's right here. It's like got the guy. It's got this huge tongue with a
Yep.
paper clip through it, or
Yeah.
a clothespin through it. Oh my God. Yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, he drew that, right? Because Jim was he
Yeah.
was also a tattoo artist, I thought.
Yes, and he still is an artist in many ways. I think he designs because motorcycles is what Jim got really into, like custom bikes, and I think he does like helmet designs, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen some of his stuff he's posted on Instagram.
That's so
He always
rad.
had like such a cool artistic style, and what a sweetheart of a man. Like such a cool dude.
Yeah.
I remember, like when my parents met him. That's kind of it's an interesting moment when you're like 14 years old and you introduce your parents to Jim. like,
Yeah.
uh, and by the way, I'm gonna like go out with him. He's gonna like drive me places.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
I'm gonna hang out with this guy. They're like,
Yeah.
oh.
And luckily my parents were so supportive, and they were just like, of course, that's great. You guys are playing a show. That's awesome. But like Jim is awesome. I've every once in a while like send him a message or whatever, just let him know I'm thinking of him. But yeah, he's a great dude. And in that band too, I mean, Arbin was in Jim Slim, and that was kind of to some extent we weren't related to Folly at the time because they were playing at that time, but we were there on the periphery waiting in the
Wait,
wings.
so you guys, so it was Folly, it was a band before you guys joined it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Folly was an operative band. Agim and Jeff, the guitarists, they had started Folly when maybe I want to say when Arbed and I were like freshmen going into sophomore year. So they were a year younger than us, and they had a bunch of different people in and out, a bunch of different singers, and at some point they had horns.
Okay.
But they had the makings of that band before I joined, which wasn't until my junior year, and then Arbin shortly after. Um,
Did
but they
you
have their own history, really.
did,
Like aside from me and Arbin
well,
and
it's
other.
not really that long of a history though, because I'm actually on Wikipedia. It said they formed in '97 at High
Yep.
Point. Then you
Yeah.
joined in '98.
Yes.
So they were a year into being a band, and
Yeah, about
then
a year
yeah.
into it, and they were another band at some point before that.
Oh, okay.
But local, just locally.
But like before this, okay, so
Yeah.
I want to transition into this because I want to, people are like, want to hear about Folly and stuff, even though I want to hear about all that other stuff too,
Yeah.
because I love that part of it. The
So
So this time you're playing drums, Jim Slim. You're in the local scene, and how the fuck did that transition from you to singer? Like, did you kind of in the behind the scenes just want to become a frontman or like just make a career as a band? Like, what was that transition from
I
the
don't,
point
I
of that?
don't know. I it's strange to go from being in the back and being just part of the rhythm section of a band to kind of being the spokesperson or the front man, whatever you might call it.
Yeah, with also a very aggressive voice out of nowhere. That's why I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, one of the primary reasons is language itself. In high school I just became very kind of obsessed with lyric writing, poetry, studying lyrics. Like
Interesting.
listening to Bad Religion and learning language that way.
Okay.
But the expression of it too, I had something. There was something in me that said, like you need to try to express this somehow more vociferously. Like you got to put this out there somehow. And Folly was like a band that, because Arbin's brother Agim was the guitarist, like we were so, like too, I'm sure, of the local scene. We were so incestuous in many ways. How we we'd go and hang out at each other's band practices, and like
Yeah.
we'd
Going to
at
each
some
other's
point we
shows and
actually
shit
like
like
Anthony,
that.
our drummer, we like quite literally stole him away from another band. We like procured him, because we saw him play in this band Yell Hockey, which is like a local band from High Point, and we're like, whoa, this dude is awesome, and we need a drummer. Like we should probably like steal him. But anyway, the from being a drummer to being a singer, it was weird. I remember the first show that I played, it was actually with Ray Ternetti. It was at the Gingerbread Castle.
Wait,
I
where
think
was
it's
that?
in Hamburg, like that crazy castle.
I slightly remember this.
They had for a little while. They had some shows there. Like I think there was some summer show. I didn't make it, but I remember like Newfound Glory played in their touring days.
What? Wow.
But yeah, that you'd have to
That's crazy.
really look through the annals to find out about that one.
Okay.
But anyway, I remember it's such a cheesy story. I went from my Roman Catholic confirmation to this show, and I stopped at Brookside Park in Sussex to change out of like my church clothes into like my show clothes, and then went to Gingerbread Castle, and it was the first experience really on stage with a microphone.
Wow.
And it was so much fun,
Okay, a couple questions here. Now,
Yeah.
when you first found your voice, because I'm always interested, I love, said this many times, I love hard music. Like, I love it. I've always wanted to be in like, if I could wave a magic wand, like, I would be in a band like Coalesce, like, now.
Yeah, right on.
If I could sing like that guy, it'd be even better.
Yeah.
So it's that moment when you find that screaming, because people just sing and they can have melody, but when you push that limits and all of a sudden you're straining your voice, but you're able to still make sounds to a
Yeah.
note and not blow out your vocal cords. Like, did you find that in the first practice, or did you fucked around with that prior to even practicing around with people?
I think that kind of honestly, that took a lot of time to develop. Because going into playing with Folly at the time that I joined the band, we were very, very ska punk, assorted jelly bean style kind of, a little bit of
Smart
hard
ass kind
here and there.
of style.
But that influence kind of more so came when Arbin joined the band,
Okay.
which was like maybe a little less than a year later. And we had all gone to hardcore shows at that time, or most of us had, and each of us, like, we all had our things our genres that we more so gravitated to. Like I was a ska kid more so than anything, but I loved street punk, like melodic punk. Jeff especially loved melodic pop punk. Arbin though came in to the band, and he had been the one with like the true hardcore street cred. He had gone to like Earth Crisis and All Out War shows, and so when he joined and we started to kind of experiment a little bit with that sound, I also started to experiment with how to scream it.
Interesting.
Um,
Can you remember the moment though when you first did it and everyone was like, you should keep doing that, and you're like, okay.
I did not a moment specifically, but I guess an era of time. When I saw that it affected people,
Mm.
And also that when screaming or when becoming a little more aggressive with our music at the time, when it had a sort of different catharsis, like there was something primal, a little more primal about it. Because like being in a sort of pop punk band, or even to some extent like a melodic ska band or a ska punk band, there was much more of a pressure to fit the melody or the harmony. And in hardcore and metal, it seemed like there was much more of a guttural expectation.
Yeah.
It was much more of like how much can I sound like I'm being stabbed? And like, will people feel that? And it was an experimentation for sure. And it took years really to kind of come to terms with what we were even doing and how we were morphing into this. Our sound, in hindsight, like looking back, I know a lot of people think of us as being kind of an exception to many bands because we we played a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. We mixed it up.
It was like dark hardcore ska riffs like thrown in
Yeah,
here and there.
yeah, with some like old school hardcore and some melodic punk. We were, and I know a lot of bands too. We were just so impressed upon. We would see a band like Lane Meyer play and just be like, man, that song's so fucking catchy. And in doing so too, we're listening to Strung Out and Lagwagon and a lot of the Fat bands and
Finding the hooks.
yeah, and we're just like that. That would be so cool to be able to work in a riff or a hook or like a melody. And then we're also listening to Mephistopheles and Less Than Jake and a lot of ska punk bands at the time. So like, oh man, I love what they're doing here. And then we're listening to fucking like Candiria and Dillinger Escape Plan, and we're thinking like, how can we press or push our boundaries a little more like these bands are doing? So
I think it comes through though. I think you guys found it because you weren't like this. Sometimes you can go to like what the fuck is a Golden Corral? What's that place where there's just,
yeah,
it's like, or it's like you go to a restaurant
Yeah.
that's just like not themed, and you're like, what am I fucking eating here? Is it like
yeah.
Chinese?
Am I
Is it
gonna
fucking
have
Mexican?
exactly? Am I gonna have the sesame chicken or like the eggplant rollatini
Or a hamburger? Yeah,
or
like
both
yeah,
at the same time?
or hummus. But like you
Yeah.
guys, I felt that you guys had this nice balance where you found it and you kind of created your own little pocket where it all meshed well. And like I think some screamo bands, they would scream just to do it, and it'd be like
Yeah.
singing. Also, they're like, no, no, no. I'm like, that just doesn't fit. But
Yeah.
I thought that. Listening to your guys' stuff, like I think that you guys mixed it really well, and I also actually just want to point out, I thought I heard a bit of a Shutdown influence in your singing.
Totally.
Yeah, okay.
Very early on. In fact, that's the first hardcore show I ever went to. Shutdown played, and that was at CC's, which was in Music, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you remember that venue.
Yeah, I talked to Chuck from Weston. That's where he played his last show.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Saw a lot of shows there.
that's a
Yeah,
fucking
definitely. For me, early on, I gravitated to I guess more so the hardcore elements than the metal elements. In fact, listening to Arvin was like, man, you got to listen to Candiria. They're doing everything. They have this like weird ass groovy jazz, and then they kick into this super like funky breakdown, and then they're just all over the place. Like crazy time signatures. And I remember even as a music kid listening to that CD and just not being ready for it. It's like, I can't.
That's a great way to put that.
I can't appreciate it yet.
Yep.
So I had to start with like the basics. A band like Shutdown, I could fathom a little bit.
It pushed a little bit, like it was simple enough, but it pushed a little bit outside of the norm, where you're kind of like it stretched it just a bit, where then there was like the super technical, where it's like going from the first Tool album to like the later stuff. It's like,
Yes.
the first one was like,
My
oh, there's the
favorite
hook.
band, actually. She would be able to really talk to you forever about that band.
Oh my god, yeah, I kind of lost faith in them after not after Undertow, the one after that.
Waiting for years for their.
I kind of the newer stuff. I'm like, it's like you're a fucking jam band, So it's like,
Yeah.
Again, there's the point where music where there's so much going on that your brain is like, I just like this. It's like when you're a kid, you're like, I eat pizza.
Yeah.
I eat chicken fingers. What the fuck is this other thing you're showing me?
I think a big misconception about Folly is that we were like planning all of this. I think a lot of people, like if we played a show, there were a lot of hardcore purists, they were just kind of like, they kind of shook us off, and I get it. And there were even like ska kids that were just like, oh, they're a gimmick or something. But the thing is, like, we never tried to have a sound. It wasn't like, let's do this and like let's purposely play this part to be heavy. What we did and what we created was very organic, and it all is a direct like kind of, I don't want to say regurgitation, because that sounds like we're just taking something and recreating it, but it really was like based on our influences, we were just formulating something. The 5 different perspectives coming into this band and writing a song. So a lot of people think that a lot of our music was purposefully done, and it really wasn't. A lot of it happened magically yet accidentally. So at shows, at times, people might hear you for the first time and they might say like, "Oh, these guys, this is contrived." You know, they did this or they wrote this to be a certain way. They're specifically marketing themselves as a band that plays all of these different genres and can't really find their own.
Right.
We never purposely did any of that shit. You know, it was kind of like what you're hearing is basically what we're channeling. And if you listen to our albums, you will get that. You'll see when we went through phases. Like you'll hear a song and you'll most likely be able to say they were listening to a lot of Converge at that time. You know, or like they were definitely listening to that NoFX album that came out last year or whatever. You know, like in being original, which a lot of people like about our music, we were also very unoriginal, you know, and I'm not afraid to admit that about us. We were very much kind of like researchers in a way. Like, let's listen to every single bit of music that we can in this scene and in all scenes. Let's go to as many shows as we can and let's try to internalize it as best we can. And when it came to like getting into that practice space and writing music, it really was like without even trying, it just kind of came out, you know?
Well, if you look at like your Wikipedia page, is where I get all of my sources from.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the bands you guys play with, like the sound you guys had, like let you play with these bands. You got like Dillinger Escape Plan, and then next to that's Newfound Glory, and then Chiodos.
Yeah.
And then, but you also have Catch 22. So it's like you could see where you've got like the pop with the technical with the, you know, kind of mix with Chiodos. I never really liked that band, actually. I thought the guy was annoying. Sorry. And like Catch 22, ska, and then Converge. Like, so you got to play with like Converge and Dillinger. Is like, was that one of those where it was like a festival, or did you actually get to play a show with them where you got to hang out?
We played a couple like standalone shows with those guys, and maybe even a couple fests. And it's great in a way to be chameleon-like and to play with all of the different bands, because that's something that we really appreciated about our music, is that we could kind of fit in. But it was also like, honestly, it was kind of it's also what prevented us from fitting in too, because at some of those shows, our sound, you know, for example, we'd go on tour with our buddies in Paulson, long-time friends of ours, Jesse and Alex Burton. Like these, you know, they put out our first EP with New World Records. Okay. They were early like ska punk kind of staples of our generation, in their own regard. And President Lemon, their band that they played in before that. But anyway, we would go on tour with Paulson. And it was really just like more so going on tour with your friends. It made no sense musically, you know, to package these two bands together. But some people would go to those shows and they would experience two completely different bands. And we always really appreciated that. As like somebody going to a show, you might get a different experience. You know, a hardcore show could feature 5 different hardcore bands that if you really didn't look and watch, you could have heard the same song for 4 hours.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our sound enabled us in many ways to kind of fit into these things, where maybe like the dude going to that show hears a band that has this little ska riff added. Maybe their ears will perk up a little bit. Some of the open-minded people in those crowds took to us, you know? So it did, yeah. It was really fun being able to kind of play with this sort of scene and with this sort of scene. But really, like, you know, early on in the New Jersey scene shows, there was so much more togetherness. And like in those hall shows, those Legion shows, those VFWs, Elks Lodges, you know, you could go to a show on a Saturday and hear 6 completely different bands.
Oh yeah.
Like a trad ska band, and then like a super poppy pop punk band, and maybe even like a little bit of a metal hardcore band, and then a ska punk band. And you know, when I was younger, that's what I always appreciated, is that like nobody was the same.
Yeah.
So with our music, and like I don't know if it was subconscious. I don't really think it was purposeful, but there was definitely a little bit of a crusade to spice things up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you guys like started playing, how quickly? I mean, granted, you had that kind of that dichotomy of, you're at a hardcore band a show, and then ska kids, but you're throwing in ska, and it's like throwing people off. You're at a ska show, throwing in hardcore, it's throwing
Yeah.
them off. But like, I mean, any picture I've ever seen of you guys, like you guys are playing, unless you're just posting all the fucking hits, like you guys are playing in front of a big fucking crowd from what I can see. Like, so when you guys started, how quickly did you guys like start getting like a following locally?
Um, it took time, and it took a lot of shows. We played at whatever shows we could get. Um, and that was also part of the beauty of the time, was that there were so many shows to play. And it was like at the advent of the internet and communicating that way, message boards like the old Ska and J Ska message board and stuff. You could just network with people on there and wind up with 5 shows planned the next month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we were just so adventurous in that way. Let's play everything. Let's play anywhere, whatever. Let's just go. We'll play twice on a Friday, if we need to. We'll play 2 shows Saturday, whatever.
Did you guys want to make this thing into something? Like, did you want to be like a
Not
football?
originally, no, not at all. I mean, I was actually just talking about this with a coworker of mine about our current generation and their kind of lack of social fun. I don't even know how to put it.
Interesting.
Like a lot of my students will go home for the weekend, and I'll always ask them, like, what are your plans? You hanging out with your buddies? Like, are you gonna go to the mall and watch people? Like, what are you gonna do? And a lot of kids are just like, nah, I'm just gonna sleep and like play some video games. And I don't want to generalize it, but we got into that discussion of what did we do in high school? And honestly, like almost any day we could after school, if we got a chance, we would be looking for a place to make some noise and practice, learn our instruments. And so like our activity itself was really important.
Yeah.
As far as the following, I don't really know. We developed kind of a grassroots following that now, if we ever assemble, like come out of retirement, so to speak, and like play, like a lot of people come out of nowhere. And
Yeah, I was watching that video from 2011, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
yeah, I don't know what it is. I'd like to think that the people that stuck with us were the ones that kind of just, like, they understood that we weren't really trying to be anything. The name Folly itself is kind of very telling of what we did and how we were.
Yeah.
And being that it's like knowing you're gonna fail but doing it anyway. And it's a spirit, I think, that people have that share with us.
Yeah, a costly undertaking having an absurd or ruinous outcome.
Yes, exactly. And it's kind of one of those things where, no, we did not plan on this catching on. We didn't plan on professionally doing anything, putting out albums. Maybe if we were able to like put a couple demos out or something,
Were you guys going to college? Because you guys, when you joined, it said you guys recorded at Nada. And then how soon after that did you guys get on Triple Crown? Because Triple Crown at that time was almost like, I always think of labels back then. There's different tiers where like the top tier was Fat and Epitaph. Then below that you'd have like, right below it was like Hopeless and
like
Asian
No Idea.
Man, No Idea, and then below that would be like Fearless, and then I feel like Triple Crown kind of landed right around there.
Yeah, that's true. They were, I think, kind of one of those like lesser known, I guess, indie labels.
Yeah.
By the time though we had met Fred from Triple Crown. This was 2003, I guess, going on to 2004. We were already kind of somewhat, I wouldn't say established, but we were already touring for maybe a year or so with our own van, like, making rounds around the country. So we had kind of established a little bit about our band beforehand, but at the time we joined Triple Crown, like they, had just put out the brand new records. I think
Yeah, that's right.
Deja Intendu had just come out, so they had like some clout in a way.
Yeah.
Um, they were looking at that time too to maybe sign some heavy stuff. So like Antarabe was another band that joined right around the time we did. Triple Crown was great for us because they were in many ways unassuming. They were very transparent about who they were and what they did and what their distro was and what they could do for us. And it was like it worked out really well for us at the time. That was our first real taste in like true professionalism, like meeting with a lawyer and stuff like.
Yeah, you guys are like, well, I guess we're in it now.
Yeah, and like we Fred took us to the Carnegie Deli and we like sat down and had like pastrami sandwiches and signed a contract. It was very like, what is going on here? But they were really also very hands off, very kind of like, we're going to trust that you guys just play and put your word out there. We like your DIY spirit, keep it about you. They didn't try to in any way change what we were doing or alter our process. Very supportive, very good people. We still keep in touch with Fred many, many years later, and they're doing well. Like they're still a successful label.
Yeah, I'm like looking at their lineup, and there's a lot of bands that I really like on there now. Like Formidian Lakes, Into It Over It, fucking
Yeah.
And I've seen Foxing play here a bunch of times. They're insane live.
Yeah.
I don't think it comes across on their CDs, but like I didn't realize that they put all these fucking these.
Yeah, they've like always self-sustained, and they do have like an early hardcore history too. I can't recall off the top of my head what they put out, but I want to say they did some staple New York City hardcore band releases back in the day.
Yeah, actually, and I was like, why does this the label to me? I remembered it having other bands on it than I remembered it. So I mean, I forgot Hot Rod Circuit. They were on there too.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm on their website now, like looking at all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jesus Christ. So like, so when you guys got on that though, and oh yeah, the Gay Blades are on that too. Who are those guys? So like, so you guys get signed and you start touring. Like, which happened first?
The touring happened first, but very, small scale. In fact, I think I don't know if it was after we'd committed to Triple Crown to record. I don't know if we had the recording yet, but I think our first like real tour where we were like showing up to venues that were giving us like vegetable platters.
Wow.
That's making it big in the punk scene.
Hey, man,
you got some celery stalks and some ranch dip and like a jar of salsa and some Tostitos. You're like, fuck, I've made it.
Yeah, we're there.
This is it. But we went on tour with Census Fail, who was at the time a New Jersey band that was like doing really well.
Yeah.
What year is this again? Great dudes. But that was like our first taste in what it's like to tour consistently, where like there are like maybe 500 to 800 kids at the show every night.
Jesus.
Really from there on in, we kind of kept we never really worked with tour managers or booking agents. Like we obviously communicated with many different ones. But we pretty much kept that DIY spirit all through and through. We did our own merch. We, to some extent, booked our own tours.
Did you see that you guys were when you guys would go out on your own? That you were, and again, what year was this around? Like 2000, 99?
I think from the time that we like really toured full time, so to speak, I would say, and by full time I mean like we'd go out for 4 or 6 weeks and come back for like 2 months and then go out and whatever. That's probably from like 2004 to 2008.
Oh wow!
So give like a 4-year range.
So you guys got signed until like 2004, 2005?
Yeah, 2003, and then our album came out in 2000. Or Insanity Later, the Triple Crown release came out April 6th, 2004. So we just celebrated. This past April, the 15-year anniversary of that album being released.
So did you guys like find though? I mean, you guys. I talked to Ben from. Well, I interviewed about Random Tasks, and then we started talking about.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about Armor for Sleep, and
Cool. Yep.
like it's another band where like the whole focus of this is like the late '90s, and a lot of the bands I talked to just they kind of stopped in like, probably 2001 is when they stopped, but it's cool to talk to someone who grew up in the scene and then created a band and then went into 2000 because that's where everything really changed. But you guys just
Yeah.
kind of just what's the word? Like not slipped into it, but you just kind of fit right into the like the roller coaster almost, like the tracks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you
No,
get to go along for a while.
definitely. That's a fair assessment of our experience.
Did you kind of hate it though? Like, did you kind of see like, because I mean, a lot of the bands now,
Yeah.
like I mean, it's cool to, especially back then, to play with, like Take Back Sunday when they were just becoming what they, their earlier stuff was like. I think it was like So Good, and then
Yeah.
Brand New and all that. So you got to play with those bands at that time.
Hmm.
Did you like? What was your? Did you guys kind of see it as this is great? We like where this transition to, or was a part of you going like, what the fuck is happening here?
It, it's hard to say. We kind of existed in our own right and revolved around what was going on. Our like playing some of those early fests, even in New Jersey, like Skate and Surf before it was Bamboozle and whatever.
Yep.
It's when we really started to see like, holy shit, this is a lot of this is taking off. A lot of it's getting commercialized. A lot of it is turning into something like grotesque. There are certain travesties that we experienced in that way.
So what do you mean? Explain some of that.
Like, it's not easy to reconcile when you have like a DIY punk spirit and coming from, in my experience, like as a young kid, just kind of seeing the way things worked in the scene, the way people communicated, the way people socialized. We were a band long enough to kind of see a lot of that die, to see a lot of bands kind of come out of nowhere. Not really, I wouldn't say like we were resentful that they didn't pay their dues or anything.
Yeah.
But we saw a lot of bands take off without due diligence, and we saw a lot of people like attached to these bands or to these movements or these genres without really like wholeheartedly loving anything. So there was a contrast that we had to deal with where like, you go to some Bomb Shelter shows in 2000 and, and you're seeing everybody at the Wayne Firehouse, like just have a good time. And then mostly all of those people were going to run into each other at any given diner locally.
Yeah.
You kind of started to see that die a little bit when the fests took over, or like, to play this show, you got to sell these tickets, or you got, even worse, you got to be in a battle of the bands to play this show with this band. And it's like, I don't know, we saw a lot of the changes, and a lot of it had to do, I guess, with the amount of money that could be made. We saw some greasy deals and some people kind of selling out for the wrong reasons. But that like I don't want to say it really affected us. We just kind of turned a blind eye to it and kept doing what we love to do despite it.
On that note where you're saying people did some like deals, whatever, I remember Barker was telling me when he was in Day at the Fair, they were playing a show with Anne Boleyn, and I like Anne Boleyn. Like I like their first two records a lot, but
Yeah.
I saw like the fashion core kick in like probably the mid 2000s where it was all
Yep.
about the hair and the jeans.
Yeah, the image of things, like the representation of things, and not the reality of the music and the lyrics.
That's what I hated.
Yeah, me too.
And I remember
Always did.
if he tells this story where he's there and he's like talking to Joe Escalante from Kung Fu Records and the Vandals,
Yep.
and they were just talking. And all of a sudden, he's like, one of the guys from Emberlin came out, and they were yelling at each other for like stealing each other's hairspray.
Yeah,
And
like fighting for the curling iron, and
that was it. No, it was a
it's like,
fucking
dude,
curling
no.
iron. Yeah, it was like the flat iron or something. And
Yeah,
that was just like that's what it became, and that I was so disgusted by that. Like what
Yeah,
the
no, truly, like what effrontery, to use a very ancient word. Um, the impudence of it all, you know.
yeah.
We had here's a little anecdote. We played a couple Warp Tours here and there, just like a couple select dates. We never were on the actual tour, but we played at Randall's Island. I forget what year it was. Played the XSDB stage,
Oh, that's awesome.
and I can't remember the band, but they were before they went on. They were. I was looking at them, and they were in the back of their van or their bus, and a couple of them were curling their hair, and the others were lifting weights. And I just remember thinking, like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? Like, stop. What the fuck? And I was in no position to really judge. And I honestly, I'm not too judgmental as a person. I get it, you know? But I just didn't want that to be what people were loving about them. Like,
Yeah.
there's some, I guess, old school mentality that I have where it's like, let the message be the guide, you know, and let the band stand for its message and let people stand for that message with that band. And I started to get, we all started to get some mixed signals with a lot of bands we toured with even and traveled with and stuff. And it's like, I don't know, what are you really doing this for? And if you're doing it for this reason, why are we doing this too? You know,
Yeah.
why are we traveling with you, or why are we playing this show with you? What is this world that we have?
Were these bands that you were touring with, or you would just show up and play a show and they were there?
Mostly bands that we would show up and play a show, you know, with. But you know, there were a couple bands along the way.
Yeah.
Towards our later days, like before we decided mutually to like maybe get a little more grounded and see what other opportunities are out there for us. We got a little jaded, honestly. We did.
I mean, like, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where we were saying when you get up, you know, you had mentioned that people looked at you guys, and that one review was talking about, you know, how just plain, how just chill you guys dressed, and
Yeah,
you didn't
yeah,
look like you didn't dress like your sound. You didn't try to match
yeah.
it, right? And I think that's when you don't dress like your sound is when you are dressing like your sound. I think that's when you're being real, like legit. And it's not to be real to be like I'm real. It's just kind of like you casually just do it
No,
without thinking
exactly.
about
Like
it.
we never would have wanted to be conceited in the way that we were real, you know? It
Yeah,
was
you're like,
just,
look at us, like we're wearing just shorts and t-shirt, but we're real, man. It's like, no, I just like really comfortable wearing this, and I get up on stage and scream, and that's what I do. But
yep.
you know, but like that energy that you're releasing, we were talking about like, you know, screaming it out loud, where you get on stage and there's the people who are releasing, and there's a crowd that's releasing. Like that room that creates that like
Yeah.
connects. The room that is showing up, you know, worried about what people are thinking about them, and the band's worried about what people are thinking of them based on their fucking fashion, there
Yeah.
is never going to be that hard like connection there. They're not going to create something in that room.
Yeah, and that's what we were playing some shows with bands that had a large draw of like younger kids, and I just kind of I wanted to shake a couple of the kids and just be like, hey, like there's other stuff out there. There are, you know, there are bands with real things to say, with real music. Like you just got to keep looking. Don't settle for this, I guess. But that's like a very unrealistic attitude that you can have in the music business. It really is.
I don't think so. I think the term realistic is a bullshit. I'm not like shitting on you.
Yeah,
I
that's
get
so.
I get mad when people say that because, you know, I always say that you're realistic compared to someone who's climbing Mount Everest right now is a complete different realistic.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's good to have hope and say like, kid, it's like, and not like look at someone and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, because then it's wrong to do that. But like if you see someone that's just not really connecting, it's like you're here for this reason, but you're not really
Yeah,
getting it, and you could see that they're not getting it. It's like, hey, do you really want to like connect to this? And they're like, yeah. You're like, why don't you try this? They're like, maybe this might work. I don't know. This might be the thing that you need, but this, it doesn't seem like you're really getting it.
yeah, yeah, and to stay true, no matter what, is important. I think we got to a point when we decided to kind of call it quits. That it was like, man, to be successful is not like sustainable, especially financially. It doesn't really match with what our idea of like actual success is. And I think a lot of bands experience that, and a lot ride through it valiantly
Yeah.
and endure. And if they do, they fight the tide, and it works out. Like, look at a band like Less Than Jake, for example, that has played since the late 90s and has never stopped.
Yeah.
And they're just doing what they do, and people are still loving them. And but it is kind of like Robbie Robertson says in Last Waltz. It's like it's an impossible way of life for some bands too. The touring, the constant nomadic presence, the transient life. It's really difficult. And like, you really got to be 100% invested,
Well, you have to be. It's like I was watching a Peter Dinklage interview yesterday. It's like those YouTube videos that pop up where people put that motivational shit music to it and all that crap.
Yeah.
And and I was like, he's like talking about I'll do like free pick. He's talking about like how he's like, I just wanted to act. He's like, that's all I wanted to do. It wasn't about the fame and the shit like that. He's like, I wanted to do whatever was possible so I could just keep acting.
Yeah.
And he goes, he's like, I slept on couches for years and I was in debt and all these things. But I think it's the people out there who do it for the music. I think like bands that have endured
true to that goal.
Yeah, because when shit's going shitty around you and you're going, crap, I'm not making any money, that's going to make that shit seem worse.
Yeah.
But if you're like, this is actually awesome because I get to do this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you truly, I think, you've found the thing you want to do, and that's what sustains. And I think a lot of where you find that there's that burnout where the bubble bursts is when the bubble bursts because the people that are filling that bubble are in there for the wrong reason, and then they leave because they realize that they weren't ever going to go there for the core reason.
Yeah, sure.
And that's when but then it leaves behind the real, like the true, what's the fucking word? Like the people who really want to fucking be there.
Yeah.
The purists will stay around for that. And at the same time, it's like, you're right though, that there is that nomadic life of touring, and it does get old where you're like, I kind of want to be maybe hanging out in the same town for years and not have to go 8 hours here one day and 12 hours here one day.
Yeah, and for the same reason too, like it's tough to complain about that, because like that, what a fun, amazing life that is too.
Yeah.
Something that I'm sure all of us, I don't want to speak for the guys in the band, but I would think that they would agree that to some extent we miss that, like waking up one day and just having this new adventure to face, going to this new place with new people. Like that stuff is, golden, and those experiences are important.
It's totally freeing. Like you get to, and I bet you still talk to people that you met in other states.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you build this bond for some reason, but for some reason there's some kind of connection because you're both. It's like, let's say like a friend of mine, Amber, she's from Chicago, and we met in like 98 or 97. I think it was like 98, and we're still friends to this day. But there's something about like us being in completely different states that are so far away from each other that had the same mentality about just loving music, and we ended up being in some spot by her, but we connected through there, and there wasn't any of this crap around us that we had to that dampened the relationship for some reason. So it's like a lot of bands will stay really true friends with these people that they met on the road because you were just there for one pure reason.
Yeah. Well, to add to that, like Agim, or Folly's guitarist and chief songwriter, is going to be a dad in October. He has a kid on the way.
Oh, nice.
His fiance is someone he met, through the band in Orlando, an old flame that, within the last couple of years, they've rekindled that. So
that's awesome.
These crazy paths in life lead to life, and I can say the same thing for Jeff, who met Amanda, his wife. They have 2 kids, 2 girls. They met also through the band, through our group of friends that we established and would see all the time in Connecticut. This Connecticut bunch that would always come out to our shows. My wife Jackie, she's from Cranford, New Jersey, but I met her through shows. She came to see Folly play at the Sussex Elks Lodge. It was the first time we met. And it's like, these roads and these pathways are so important. So all the jaded stuff and all the changes that we kind of had to see and were exposed to, it's like, that stuff kind of has to happen.
Yeah.
Because there are such amazing opportunities that we all were presented with, and opportunities that we all ran with throughout the years because of this band, that have inevitably led us to where we are. And people ask me that too, about like, what made you want to be a teacher? And to some extent, yeah, it's like I saw my dad be a teacher. Like, I know the nature of the profession, and I went out through firsthand experiencing my father be one. But really, like, I'm an English teacher, not because I was a bookworm in high school, because I wasn't. I'm not a huge reader. Like, I'm an English teacher because I fell in love with words because of punk rock songs, and because I played in a band where I would create words, scream words at people, and have them scream them back at me. That my love for language is what led me to my profession. And so when I think of the band, it's not just like a musical entity. It's like this enabler. It's this thing that allowed all 5 of us to like kind of pursue our own grail,
Yeah.
And it's like no matter the scene or the culture or the environment in which we played and traveled and whatever, it's like without it, I can't imagine life without having had this incredible experience of being like a New Jersey kid from Sussex County that, through serendipity alone, just happened to be at a Catch-22 show with my brother's band. And then like years on down the line, when we've gotten back together as Folly and played, like we played this past September in Jersey City, and like hundreds of people came out to scream and go crazy for that 20 minutes. It's like, this is very much bigger than me. This is way bigger than anything I could have imagined, just playing after school in high school in my parents' basement with my buddies.
Yeah, but it's cool because you also, I think deep down, you had that passion for words and making them mean something, right? And they connected with you. So what you did is you put that meaning. It's like, not only did you put the words out there, and I'm sure as a songwriter you have a certain like rules for how you would write a song. Like everyone has their set rules. It's either this has to rhyme, or this has to like, this has to be witty, or this has like a hidden meaning, all that stuff. But when you put that much time into it, it gives it the word that comes out. It's like when you say something to somebody in an aggressive tone, like you can say things that have like a lot of venom in it, and words can be very just fucking painful or like uplifting or whatever, just because it's a fucking word. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it has meaning, but people put meaning to it. So the people come back to these shows now, it's like you put something out there that you also attach something to it, and then they got it. And so when they're coming back to you, they're yelling it back. It's like they're kind of,
and they got it, and they like internalized it in their own subjective way, which is really neat,
Yeah. It's also they're also connecting to like themselves from 10 years ago, which is also a big thing for them.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of nostalgia nowadays with some of the folks that come out of nowhere. In September, we had a lot of that, but also we had some people that had never gotten a chance to see us, like maybe people that caught on to us a little later.
Yeah.
And so that's been really neat too, with some of these like random shows that we played throughout the last handful of years, is that somebody might say like, man, I got into you too late after you broke up, and I couldn't wait to see you guys play.
That's so sick.
Yeah, it's really neat. but the point is, I guess, in my very strange, like truly like Game of Thrones ish circle here, is that the wheel, doesn't necessarily need to be broken. It just is. It's so cyclical. It always comes back. And this band is very much. It's like such an important part of my life. It's not just a band. It's like a lifestyle and like a pivotal choice that I made and the five of us made together to do something and just let it throw us into life,
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I love it.
yeah, it's just really neat. And like we're kind of like, I wouldn't say we're old. We're older. Um, but we still hang out like we're still best friends. And our music has kind of bonded us too. It always has over the years. It's not like we need an excuse to see each other, but our friends and our circle of friends, and now like not just friends but families that are developing because of this band. It's like I kind of see it as a magnet that has held so many people together over the years, and I'm really grateful. Honestly, I'm just very grateful for it.
No, it's cool, man. I think some bands out there they leave the band and they just don't even want to think positively about it for a really long time or like ever.
Yeah.
But it's cool when bands still hold on to that. And like you guys have gotten together and played a bunch of, reunion shows throughout the years. So
Yeah.
that's cool that you guys got together. Actually, real quick, when and I'm definitely gonna wrap this up soon, but when you
Yeah.
when you got back into the room to practice before last September,
Mm.
how quickly does your voice come back?
uh, maybe a couple songs in.
That's amazing.
It's tough because yeah, like I'm a very soft spoken person. Even as a teacher, like I never raise my voice. I'm very mild mannered. Um, I think one of the reasons why too, when my students find out that I am in a band and have been in a band, especially like a screamer
Yeah,
in a band, they're just like, "What?" Which is always a classic reaction I love to see.
that's
That they
hilarious.
can see like, wow, you have like a crazy side to you or an animalistic side or whatever. But also, yeah, as far as my voice, like we just practiced actually this past weekend. It was the first time that the five of us have gotten together since before that show. And yeah, it took a couple songs to really
Warm up
break
the
through.
instrument.
Yeah. And it will take many more songs to warm them up. But we have some plans in the works to do some stuff without specifying to celebrate our 15-year anniversary of this first album, Insanity Later. So we've kind of like again come out of retirement. Not like that's too hard to do. It's just like let's meet at the studio. Our stuff is set up there. We have like a monthly rehearsal space.
Oh
So
wow.
um,
You said before you were like you're living in North Carolina. The
yeah,
funny thing about this podcast is that I've noticed that bands are kind of getting back together and just being like, hey, we want to play. Like Digger's doing it.
yeah, I
Hum,
saw
yeah,
Humble Digger and Asbury coming up.
well, but Digger's been doing that for a while now in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania. Like they'll still play Fun Size, like
a
James.
great band.
They still play. They're playing a show coming up like next weekend or something like that.
Awesome.
But it's like it's okay to, if you're gonna do it, it's cool to be like, yeah, we can actually write music. Like we've talked about doing like we have me and Chris. Chris has a song written, like a Lamar song written, and I have a song written. But
Really?
yeah, like I
Yeah.
had like two, but I had one that just kind of landed with me about a month ago. But the problem is that he's in Jersey, Casey's in Jersey, Sean's
Yep.
now in Arizona, and I'm in North Carolina.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I'm
you guys are
seeing
very
that.
progressive.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, if I was in Jersey, it'd be so cool because, especially with this podcast, I'd be going to like, I'd be driving to go interview people. There's so much opportunity there, but I'm so just done with New Jersey for my own personal shit that
Sure.
it almost kind of sucks because there are all these cool things that are happening right now. Where I'm like, God damn it, I'm missing so much stuff.
Yeah. Well, the nature of this state kind of it either keeps people here or it pushes them away. Uh, but you always have your boys are always here. Like
That's the thing.
so many people are not going to leave and like keep whatever spirit alive that needs to be kept alive.
Yeah, they're like Mike in the movie It, where he's like stays in town, the librarian, keeping the light on.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I have like a ton of questions, but I want to be wary of your time, and I also have to bust out. But
Right on. Yeah.
um, so cool, man. So I'm gonna ask two more questions, and we're gonna wrap
Okay.
this up. But is there anything you want to plug, even though you kind of alluded to it, maybe? Because this is gonna
Yeah.
come out in a couple weeks.
I would say just keep an eye and an ear out. We got some stuff in the works, some exciting stuff going on. We're dormant, but every once in a while we kind of erupt. So
Actually, what I did want to ask you real quick, do any of your
yeah.
students ever make it out to like do they ever catch wind about your shows and then show up?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Like in fact, we played Bamboozle. I don't know when that was. It was a
A while
handful of
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
It's like the year that Bon Jovi played in Foo Fighters. Like it was
Okay.
like a big year. But we played side stage. It was fun. It was great. It was an amazing ensemble. I think it was like Comeback Kid, Bouncing Souls. But anyway, a handful of my students that year came, and we were studying at the time. It was towards the end of the year. It was in May, so we were studying Catcher in the Rye at the time. And I, I remember looking out and seeing uh, this girl Gina, who is actually a musician in her own right and professionally pursuing music, which I'm very proud of her for. But she had a sign held up, and it was like a literary homage to Catcher in the Rye, if you're a nerd for the story. Um,
That's awesome.
but it was like, please don't shoot Ernie. He's doing the best he can. And Ernie is like a piano player, a phony snob of a piano player in Catcher in the Rye. But yeah, looking out and seeing them there, really cool. My students are really supportive of it. They like it. And I don't hide it from them either. I'm not the
Right.
type of teacher that's like, you can't know this about me. If anything, I like use it in a manipulative fashion. Like, hey, look, I'm a guy that does things, like trust me,
I'm pretty cool.
yeah, like
I'm a cool
I don't
mom.
want to be like cool teacher guy, but at the same time, I kind of am one. So like, listen to the things I have to say.
It's funny. For years I would give like my little sister, like I got her into punk bands, and
Yeah.
she is what's the age difference? 17 years younger than me, and
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, she just turned 22 this year, 22, 23. Fuck, I should know this. And so 23. So I gave her back in the day. I gave her like all this music when she was like 10. I was like, "Here's mixed CDs. You listen to them."
Yeah.
And I would always say like, "Yeah, I was in a band back then." She's like, "Oh, cool." She came to the reunion show that we played last year with Humble, and
Yeah.
we like when I walked off the stage, she was like, "That is the coolest thing I've ever seen." I was like, "Yes, I'm awesome."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can
Right.
know what that feels like when you like, that crowd that you're around, the younger crowd. You're like, "I was pretty hip back in the day."
Yeah,
They
and
see
I
it.
never want to like, overtly bring it up like, "Hey guys, I'm an awesome dude. Check out my band." But if they ever ask about it, because the kids talk and they always find out about it, so they always ask questions, and I'm like, "Yeah, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about it?
That's
You want to
wild.
see a video? Here, let me show you. This
Yeah,
is what
go
happens."
go on YouTube. You got a ton of fucking videos on there.
And they're like, "Why don't you wear shoes?" And that's always their question. Like, "Why don't you wear shoes on stage?"
Because I'm a big fan of Dan Yemin.
Yeah, is that right?
He would wear socks.
Dan never wore shoes.
He was wear socks. That was
Oh,
like his
nice.
trademark. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a tradition. I don't know how it started, but I kept it
very Henry Rollins of you. That was the one.
natural. You want to feel your skin on the dirty stage.
Oh
You want to wear it with you.
Yeah, pick a nail like that's just like
Uh,
sticking up on the floor.
It happened a couple times.
Oh God.
A couple dirty, bloody moments.
Oh Jesus.
I
I was more concerned when I saw you guys playing in that video in 2011, and kids are jumping on stage, and I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna step on his feet. Oh my God, they're gonna step on his feet.
That happened too many times. Yeah, many
Um,
like nails that were like pushed in and.
oh Jesus.
But it's okay. Yeah.
Actually, one more quick question before the last question.
Sure.
Did you finish plugging what you wanted to plug? I cut you off.
No, that just very vaguely. The plug is to just keep an eye out and ear out for some stuff coming up. We got some cool plans in the works this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw one thing you would, I always see when hardcore shows where the guy will put the mic into the crowd and then someone randomly becomes Mr. Hardcore Singer.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, did that ever annoy you when someone was like trying to become the singer when you gave them the mic and just
Um,
yelling?
yeah. Well, it's hard to say like, man, you're so into this. Like, stop being so into this.
Yeah,
How dare you be so enthusiastic? Like,
yeah.
but yeah, no, there were some moments like man, yeah. Like
It,
there were a couple times where I had to almost like literally shove somebody away. Like, all right, come on, stop. Come on.
I'm
Not,
the singer, bitch.
yeah, or not even that. Just like go somewhere
Yeah,
else.
go jump in the crowd. Go take
But
your
that
thing.
also, at the same time, that's like so cool too. That
Yeah,
somebody loved it so much that just had to.
yeah.
Like I love that too. I was never so offended or really annoyed at it. Um, if anything, I found that as a really nice little compliment, nice little way for you to show that you love this so much.
Yeah, you don't seem like the kind of guy who would just sit there and be pissed at the show and be like, "Did you guys fucking see that shit?"
No, no.
Yeah.
In the back of my mind, I'm like, it's not your birthday party, buddy. But at the same time, I'm like, well, he's having fun. Look at him. Oh, he's
Yeah.
loving this.
Like it's
So,
that Jersey attitude where we're like, just like our driver mentality kicks in. I'm like, you see this fucking idiot?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah. All right, last question, and I
Yeah.
will let you get back to your day. What
Right on.
scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
Oh man, first of all, that's a great question.
I know.
It's really awesome. You know, uh, okay. Where do I begin? All right. One thing I know safely is, one thing I learned, invaluable sort of skill, and this can be applied across all, um, I don't know what you want to call them, titles or positions in the scene. Um, I think the DIY spirit generally is part of my ethics today, and it's part of like even in my teaching, it's very important to me that like you rely on yourself to make things happen. Um, when you think about the New Jersey shows of the late '90s, early 2000s, like all of those shows were done by fucking kids, like responsible kids and witty, intelligent, incisive kids. But we're talking about somebody who would like negotiate the price of like a Legion Hall,
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not having a quinceanera here. Like, we got to talk that down. Like, getting it as low as possible. Putting out, at the time before the internet, especially, like, physical flyers going everywhere to hand them out to the mall, outside Hot Topic, Rockaway Mall, or to, like,
Hell yeah.
any diner in the area, in all of the neighboring counties. And then, like, from a promoter standpoint, too, the contact and the communication and all the skills that are necessary to make sure that this goes on, you know? And then you have networking with all of the bands and all of the people that would come to these shows and setting up for yourself this incredible atmosphere where people could come have fun, express themselves, but also know at the end of the day that like you made this happen. No, you weren't waiting for somebody to do this. And all the bands, and even to some extent, all of the people coming to the show, like you had to have your own sense of like judgment and decisiveness. So the whole DIY mentality and like really what permeates throughout all of the shows that really in New Jersey alone, because that's really all I know. in the grand scheme of things. Like, that is something for me that was so important, and it's just so cool to look back on. I know that it's still around. I know that even though I'm out of the loop, like, I know kids are still throwing Jersey basement shows and booking stuff here and there, but you can't go to a Legion Hall or a VFW nowadays like you could back then as like a fucking 16-year-old kid and say, hey, I have 5 bands. And in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I only have like 2 of my friends' bands, but I have like 5 bands booked, you know, and like negotiate that whole thing and make that happen. And all the bands are selling their own merch, and they're selling their demo tapes or cassettes that they burned or high-speed dubbed. And it's just like, man, fucking yeah. You know, why should we rely on anyone else when we can make this all happen ourselves and build a community? And that's really what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking about like your show and what you do here and like calling back to this time. I think it's so important. I really do. It's not just like for fun. I think it's so important that people really consider what that time was and how it set up for so many people a mentality where like, yeah, I can do this. I can totally do this on my own. I can make anything happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the ethic of, I guess, like personal responsibility, accountability, dependability, you can't beat it. You really just can't. Something that I carry with me in all aspects today.